All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for today's third episode of CEDA Sparks. We're so glad you're here and thank you for joining us. I'm the moderator for today, Lauren LaGreca, and I'm the marketing manager here at CEDA. As a reminder, CEDA is the CUGA Economic Development Agency, your one-stop for economic development, providing you as business owners or soon-to-be business owners with easy access to all the information, incentives, and resources needed to either start or grow a business in Cayuga County. So whether you're launching your idea, looking to grow, or transitioning out of your business, we will meet you where you are in your business journey. CEDA Sparks is a new series that we've launched to bring you information in bite-sized pieces and will be in a recorded format so you can revisit it at any time. Our vision for this series is to help businesses embrace the 3 E's: to be engaged, to be educated, and to feel empowered. We know the world of economic development can be a sea of acronyms, right? Everything stands for something else. So don't worry, we're here to help you navigate through any confusion. Today's episode is focused on the value of HR. How does HR ignite success for your business? The cultural misconception is that you don't need HR until you do. But the reality is you need HR even before you say hello. So whether you're a team of 1 or 100, HR is the foundation for your business's success. So get ready to empower your business of any size to thrive and reach its potential. If you have questions during today's presentation, we ask that you please raise your hand using the reactions button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll go ahead and unmute you if you're not already muted. Our guest speaker today loves a good conversation, so we are welcoming the questions as we go on. As I said, today's presentation is being recorded and will be made available for future reference on CEDA's website, right on our homepage, and also on our YouTube channel. Follow us on all of our social media platforms, and you'll see when the recording is available. You can also see the prior episodes as well. After we stop the recording, please do stay on to ask any additional questions you might not want recorded and to hear additional CEDA updates. Now I will turn this over to my colleague, Paul Vigiano, CEDA's Small Business Development Specialist, who will introduce himself and today's guest speaker, Melody Smith-Johnson.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Hello, everyone. I am Paul Vigiano, CEDA's Small Business Development Specialist. I work with entrepreneurs and small business owners by supporting them with the resources that they need, whether it's market research, business planning, financial projections, or marketing strategies. We're here to help make your business a success. And by the way, our services are free and confidential. I had the pleasure of meeting Melody Smith-Johnson for the first time at an SBDC conference where she enlightened me on the principles of HR. She is smart, funny, easy to talk to, thoughtful, and kind-hearted. I'm honored to say since our first meeting, we have become fast friends. Melody was born and raised in Harlem, New York, who relocated to the Finger Lakes for both love and the opportunity to lead a large multi-state HR team in the nonprofit sector. With 20 plus years as an HR professional, Melody enjoys working with leaders and teams to design, develop, and execute organizational-wide initiatives that are culturally sensitive and created to strategically position a business as an employer of choice. Her passion and commitment to instilling practices that has recognized HR entrepreneurial business partner. She leads through empowerment, engagement, and quality standards that result in successfully attaining shared goals. She is a proud wife, a mother, a grandmother, an ordained minister, a social justice activist, a philanthropist, and a tenacious servant leader who enjoys empowering women and uplifting communities of color. She holds a bachelor's in political science and psychology and 2 masters, one a master's in theology and a second a master's of science and management. Melody sits on several nonprofit and economic development boards, including the Cayuga County Chamber of Commerce, the Cayuga County NAACP, the Harriet Tubman Center for Justice and Peace, the Cayuga Tourism Board, and the Leadership Council of the Women's Fund of Central New York. She also supports local and national initiatives designed to increase access and equity for marginalized communities. Wow, can I just say to everyone, please buckle up and hold on to your seatbelt because this is going to be a jam-packed webinar of awesome information. Melody, thank you so much for being here today. We are thrilled to have you. to educate us on the importance of HR. Without further ado, I introduce to you all our guest speaker, the incomparable Melody Smith Johnson.
Well,
Take
good afternoon, everyone. Paul, let me tell you something. I need to take you everywhere I go.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah. Let's make that happen. Put you on my payroll for sure. Maureen, we can share him. How about that? Well, listen, I am super excited to be here. I'm really honored to be part of this series that engages and educates and empowers business owners, small businesses, large businesses. It's really important in this environment, in this economy, to be laser focused on building on these 3 E's. So hats off, and thank you so much to CEDA, for CEDA Sparks, Maureen, Paul, and Lauren for your team and for your support, for the invitation, for the honor. I'm sitting in the district. We're just a block or two away, the bid district here in Auburn, New York. We are in the chosen hometown of Harriet Tubman, Sending Melodies, which is where I run my business out of, the work that I do that Paul introduced. And I'm really excited to be here. So let's get into it. We're going to have an opportunity to talk about something that all of us, if we've ever worked, have experienced. We have all experienced human resources. I don't think that there's anyone on the planet who's ever had a job who has engaged any organization can say that they haven't. And so, as Lauren said, whether you are a business owner or participate in the organization or functioning of a business as a one-person business, probably like Ebony is, or 150 people or 1,500 people, the engagement of HR in your corporate strategy and your business strategy is really important. And I love this graphic to start this conversation off because it does give you a pretty great visual to understand. Though HR is the center of all of this, there's so much to unpack about HR. But guess what? I think we have 40 minutes. So we're going to hone in and be laser focused in on what I believe strategically will help position you as a leader, as a key executive or key person in your business and your organization to understand HR, and then walk away with some takeaways and some key activities and strategies to elevate your understanding. So as we talk about this, I want to invite you to realize that HR has evolved and it's continuing to evolve. So it's not anymore only just a center for talking about benefits or a center for having conversations about performance or who's getting fired, right? So not the troubleshooting place. The role of HR for a highly effective, well-empowered organization, when you think about it, it really is the highlighted bold names, the highlighted words on this page. So it's really about the HR professional should ensure that the company's most important asset are the humans that do the work, right? And our job as an HR professional, and if you are a company of one, guess who you are? You are the HR professional. Your job is to provide an environment to create support programs, policies, and procedures. Those 3 P's are critical, and we'll talk more about that foster, create, and strategically design a work environment that allows for these employees to be engaged in your business, the business of your business, through effective employee and employer relationships and relations. I use the word relations and relationships interchangeably, and we'll talk more about that as well. And so why is that important? Like, what difference does that make? What enables the HR team to make that happen? Well, I'd like you to think of it this way. There's a partnership that occurs between the employee and the employer. And in this partnership with the business leader that fosters that positive work environment is something that is called an employee life cycle. So employees don't stumble into your business. I mean, they can, but I'm encouraging you to make sure that they don't. And we'll talk about how to make sure that that happens strategically. And I want you to think about this statement, that the employer-employee relationship, right, mirrors an interpersonal relationship. It's not the same, but it mirrors it in the sense that it's not linear. Like, it doesn't start and then you get the person into your business, you get your new employee in, and then before you know, they're either gone or they're promoted. There are aspects to that relationship that is depends upon input and output, depends upon feedback. It's cyclical. And it should be centered around a common goal, a shared strategy, and an outcome. And how do we know that that's true? Because there is a life cycle of an employee, and I want to unpack that together. And I want to invite you to interrupt me at any time to say, Melody, can you pull that out just a little bit more? Help me to understand that better, because I want to make sure that this conversation that we're having, this dialogue, you get it, right? You can go back and look at the YouTube, but I want to make sure you get it right now, because this is what I know. Our time is valuable, and I want to thank you for your time today. So typically, when we think about HR, we think about, oh my gosh, I have a new position. I'm very excited. I want to go ahead and find the employee to fill that position. But I want to encourage you that as the leader of your organization or the leader of organizations, and you're in a key position, that is the second place to start. I want to say that the first place to start is to ensure that HR is part of your business strategy. Right? Because the human capital, the people who you bring into your business are going to be the ones that enable, that promote, that give life to your corporate strategy, to your business strategy. And your HR team is the team that provides that human capital. So you want to make sure that the HR team is in line with your corporate strategy, yes? You want to make sure that your HR team understands what your corporate strategy is, that that's been communicated, and that the HR strategy is in line. So you want to have that strategy that the HR team is promoting to your new hires and throughout your organization before anyone says hello to a new employee. So we're talking about at the center of your strategic workforce plan that's designed to deliver your corporate strategy. Step one. Step two then is, how do we get these employees in who are going to be part of this effective, high-performing work environment? We want to attract the folk who we know want to be part of that. So we want to make sure, one and two, that we know who they are and they know who we are. So we want to develop a plan, develop a process, and we have enabling technology these days that allows us to do that. We want to make sure that folk know that we are an inclusive employer. We want to make sure that we're clear about who we are. So there's enabling technology that will allow you to design job descriptions and ads that are clear and that are able to demonstrate that you're concerned about the folk who you're attracting. And then once you get those folk in and the communication about who you are, because you've been clear about your strategy, you get those folk into your organization, then there's a process called onboarding. I'm going to raise my hand because I've been on both sides of the table on this. Anyone ever had the deer in the headlights look? When they've gone through the recruitment process and they sit in front of the HR team and there's a stack of paperwork in front of them. And it's fill out the benefits, sign the W-4, complete the I-9, papers, signatures. And my God, I don't know what you just said. How long is this going to last? When can I go see my supervisor? When do I get paid? That type of conversation, yeah? I think that resonates with a lot of us. What that doesn't communicate to this person that you spent all of this time attracting into your corporate structure, into your strategy, into this environment that you spent all this time to build, is the opportunity to become a part of that. What it communicates is that, one, I don't value your time, and two, I don't understand your value. So I'm inviting you again to realize that onboarding is an opportunity for you to engage this employee, this new person, to explain expectations, to explain how they can be supported as a new person, a new employee, as part of the vision of your organization, and how they can be a part of the business. And we can talk about it a little further, why that's important. Then as we engage the employee, they're part of your organization, they know about what the expectations are, they go to do the work. They go to do the work, but the expectation from the employee, get this clearly, is that there is some training that happens because you value the skill set that they bring to you, that human capital. You enable them to be trained, you enable them to be developed. That says that I am aware of what your needs are. Yeah, that says I'm aware of how valuable you are to me as an organization and as a leader. So we want to make sure that all the talent, every person that you have has that opportunity. This is work, but this is strategy, and this is important because as we get to the 8th step, we want as little exiting as possible outside of what's necessary. And there is some necessary exiting that has to happen. Moving forward to recognition in the life cycle of the employee, knowing that this is necessary. And again, it doesn't have to be linear. You can go back and forth between what's needed according to the employee. You must be flexible in this regard. So simply, reward and recognition says that when I do something that is relevant, I need to be rewarded, I need to be recognized, and it needs to be genuine. In other words, I don't want to add a girl or add a boy just because you need to check off the box as a supervisor. I don't need to be told that I'm great or I'm marvelous. If I'm not great or marvelous, it needs to be genuine, yeah? Because that tells the employee that you understand what their value is to your organization. Moving forward to progression and performance. We know that everybody requires feedback. And again, the employee life cycle is about engaging your employees and creating that environment so that you can deliver to your employer and employee relationship, your corporate structure, your corporate mission, and your corporate values. And then this 8th part of the cycle, I have experienced it many times when, as an HR leader and a business leader, folk leave an organization and the organization has no idea why that person has left, right? It's a missed opportunity. And I would encourage you as a leader to make sure that if someone is leaving your organization, and for sure, there are times when people must leave. There are times when it's time to exit. But if someone's leaving your organization, you take that as an opportunity to find out why, if that opportunity exists. And there are things called exit interviews, so I would encourage you to do those. If we have any questions, let me know. I'm going to make sure during this presentation that I pause for questions, Paul, okay?
Melody, I have a question.
Yes.
So I wanted to go back for a second and talk about strategy because that word is pretty common nowadays. And I'm thinking to myself as you're speaking, for me, thinking about the people that I'm dealing with on a day-to-day basis, like the biggest complaint I have right now is workforce, right? We can't get anybody to work for us. And I'm wondering if their strategy or their, how do you define that? Is it defining the role of the job really, really well? So there's clarity for the person beforehand, what the pay is going to be, what the hours are going to be, what the expectations are. And then how does that differ from onboarding? Because it feels like, is onboarding just another layer of that? Or do you want to do something more like onboarding in the beginning? So people are, because people are leaving like 2 weeks in or 3 weeks in, it sounds like, to a lot of these smaller companies and businesses. How do you avoid that is my question through this strategy through the number one, point to do. How do you do that?
Yeah. So you've asked probably 4 questions in that one question.
Sorry.
But let me answer at least 2 for the sake of time. So, strategy is something that I think we all understand as business owners and just as folk who have been in the business world as mature folk, right? It's a plan that has outcomes, inputs and outputs, and timelines. So when we're talking about HR strategy, we're talking about taking the business overall mission, values, and goals and adding in the human capital component and ensuring that throughout this life cycle that those mission, values, and goals are communicated in recruitment, in onboarding, in learning and development, in reward and recognition, in performance evaluation, even in conversations about retaining and exiting staff. So when we're talking about recruiting staff, so recruiting is one thing, right? That's the attraction piece and explaining what the job is about. And if you don't have a job description for that, you're already behind the 8 ball. You need to make sure that your job description, one, is absent of bias. And there are many ways to do that. And you should spend the time to make sure that happens and that it's clear and that it's able to be understood. 5th grade reading level is about what the industry says, right? Onboarding is in fact something that needs to be done the moment you say hello. right? It is engaging the employee, and we'll talk more about employee engagement for your corporate structure in a moment, but onboarding can officially be a process where you share what your company is about, overarchingly, in whatever way works for you, what you want to share, the expectations of the job, the expectations of being part of this corporate partnership. God bless you, Maureen. And then also what it means to be in their particular department, in their particular program. So in my experience, onboarding is an official part of training a new employee. And I want to encourage everyone on this call and every company that intends to retain employees who are high performing to create an onboarding program that communicates just that.
Great, makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. So we know that this is what it looks like to be an employee, right? And from an employer standpoint, understanding these aspects of what an employee deals with, not necessarily feeling as they go through this, but it happens. Performance evaluations occur, training happens, reward and recognition happens throughout the employee life cycle. Understanding this and paying attention to it will help you have a better outcome for retention. So what keeps us alive? Like, we got a lot of things to do as business owners. We have business to run. We're building bikes as we're riding it, some of us who are small business owners. And those of us who are fortunate enough to be in larger organizations and we have HR assistants, HR directors. What is it that allows all of this to keep going? What is the grease to the wheel, in other words? Well, there's a brilliant man by the name of Zig Ziglar, who has a quote that has resonated with me for many years. And it says, research indicates that workers have three primal needs. It's interesting. I use the word primal. He uses the word prime. Interesting work, which means that it needs to be relevant, right? It needs to meet the need of understanding the cause of why I'm part of this organization, tied to a strategy or a goal. Recognition for doing a good job, at a girl or at a boy, relevant and timely, and being let in on things that are going on in the organization. Simply understanding what the company is doing, what's happening at the organization, giving them an opportunity to be part of how the organization is growing. Information is critical. Right? So that creates a win-win situation. Anytime you're able to allow someone to be a part of your business in a way that they can understand and see themselves in it, it's part of a win-win. And that's what we call employee engagement. If you want to boil it down to one very critical piece, I would say it's employee engagement. So I'd like you to consider this, and I invite you to look at this equation. Engagement does not equal happiness. And I want you to think about if you've ever supervised someone or been in a position yourself where you've been, happy to get a check. Employees are happy to receive a check every biweekly or how often they get paid, but they're not necessarily invested. They're not necessarily engaged. Paul, I'll go back to when you said, folk will jump onto a position and there for 2 weeks and then they're gone, right? So oftentimes we'll look at the countenance or we'll look at how someone shows up to see that they're engaged. But I want to invite you to really go dig a little deeper, to pay closer attention to how you as a leader are interacting with your employees, to see whether or not they're involved, whether they're enthusiastic, whether they're committed to their work and to their environment, AKA the workplace. Because when employees feel engaged, when they feel like they're a part of, when they feel like there's interesting work, when they feel like they know what's going on in the organization, that there's communication that's going on, they care about the company, they care about the business, and they do their best to help the business achieve those goals. Yeah? Making sense?
So Melody, if I could just say, I mean, I'm hearing you loud and clear, and I think there's two things that really stand out for me personally is, company goals. What are they, right? I mean, has the company made it clear what the goals are, no matter what level you're at? And then also the word interesting work. I mean, that to me translates to, have you learned as the employer or the HR person or whoever, what the gifts are, right? You hired the person for a reason. What are their gifts and what value do they bring to the table? And how do you make sure that you're utilizing those gifts in the job itself, correct?
Yeah.
That's what makes the work
Yeah.
interesting,
Yeah,
correct?
so your HR team should be, first of all, if you're hiring an HR team, you should be employing everything that I'm saying to your HR team, right? Your HR team should be well gifted and well versed in executing everything that I'm saying. And if you are the HR team, business of one, you need to get some help to make sure that you have these abilities and these resources. So as you're recruiting a new employee, that is your time to find out if they have the gifts, if they have the interest, if they're a good fit for your corporate structure, your mission, your values, and your goals of your business. I can't say enough that we don't have the privilege anymore, given how expensive it is to run business, to gloss over the recruitment process. And because it's a very expensive hire, it's a very expensive hello, and the time that it takes to make that happen, that's why you have to have all this in place before, because the cleanup is expensive.
Yeah.
Research says that it takes close to 6 months of an employee's salary to replace the employee that you just left. No one has time for that or money for that. It's expensive. Yeah.
Yeah, you've said
Cool.
it before.
Yeah, absolutely. So when employees are engaged, not only do they care, they are invested, right? So employee engagement, this is really important. I'm sure many of us have thought about this somehow. It passed through our minds, but I want to make sure that we get this in this moment. It's not just about the benefits and the bonus. In other words, it's not just about the money. It's also about being a part of the business's success. The workforce today needs to really feel as if what they're bringing to the table is value and that is visibly rewarded, right? So engagement equals psychological investment and emotional commitment from the employee's stance, from the employee's perspective. On the employer's side, our job as the HR team or as the business leader is to make sure that this happens. And if it doesn't happen, a famous, I would say a wonderful mentor of mine says that all that happens well or doesn't happen well rises and falls on leadership, right? It's our job to make sure that this happens well. Yeah. So how is it that we want to say that effective employee engagement is happening? What does it look like? And I want to make sure that before we exit this space, that everyone is clear about what that looks like. Because if we're saying that what keeps that life cycle going, what's the lifeblood of that is employee engagement, you can't leave this place without knowing how to keep that going, right? Again, there is a collection of words at the bottom of this, and the largest word there is partnership. So the partnership between the employer and the employee is very real, right? We're not looking for best friends or family. This is a business relationship, but there's a partnership because we're aware as employers and business owners and leaders that the investment that we're making in the human capital to run our business, they are in fact making investment in their time, in their business, and in their lives, and their personal development to help make our business successful. So I would encourage you that these are, 5 steps that in my experience and in my research, in fact, 2022 Gallup poll workplace engagement study has put these forth to say that this is a way to ensure that your employee engagement is effective. One, measuring it. And what does that mean? There are many ways to do that. I'm a proponent of surveys. You can take surveys. Exit interviews are very, very popular. I would encourage you not to just measure whether folk are engaged as they leave. I would encourage you to do stay interviews. Why are people staying?
Hmm.
What is good about being in your business? What can we change? What can we improve on? Why not get the good information while the getting is good? Yeah. Ensure that there's clear and ongoing communication. That's important because that is active work to address the needs through dialogue and communication. Dialogue is not a monologue. It is asking a question and waiting for the answer. It's providing feedback loops that are active and relevant and communicating that they exist. Quite often in business, we'll create a process, we'll create a marvelous way to communicate with our staff and not tell our staff that it exists, right? So it's not just having it exist, is making sure that folk are aware that it exists, how to use it, and the value of it so that they can find themselves in it. And make sure that it's ongoing, make sure that it's built to be sustainable. These three are really important because it speaks to the future of your organization, having growth-oriented conversations. And what does that look like? It means when you're engaging your staff, have an agenda. Let it not be fly by night so that your staff knows that you value their time and you value your time, right? Have an agenda for meetings, set expectations, command outcomes so that folk know where you're going and how to get there. Engagement, right? Let there be engagement in this way and communication in this way on a regular basis. How many of you have been surprised at a performance evaluation? I didn't know my supervisor felt this way. I didn't know I was failing. I didn't know there was an issue. That should never be. If in fact, we are understanding the life cycle of the employee, knowing that employment and engagement is really the foundation of making sure that that continues from both sides of the coin, employer and employee. Have those conversations on a regular basis so there's no surprises at the midpoint, however it is that you choose to evaluate your employee. And let me say that it needs to at least be after onboarding at some juncture to ensure that that person still is a good fit for your organization and on an annual basis. I want to say having strength-based conversations is also important. It's motivating. Coming from an asset-based position as opposed to a liability-based position. You're saying to your employees that what you bring matters to me, and I'm interested to know how it is that we're going to use the strengths that you have. Language is important, as opposed to saying dealing with your weaknesses. There's a way to say another way to say that. What are your challenges that you're working on? These little nuances are important when you're engaging staff to ensure that you're retaining them. Strength-based conversations. Focus on well-being. Today, after this whole world has just come through a pandemic, burnout is so real. We need to make sure as leaders and as HR professionals and your HR team that is functioning well, helps you to establish that there's a focus on all parts of the person who comes to work for you. I remember when I was being attracted to work for a large corporation, and one of the attractions was, Melody, we have 150 employees in one department. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. It's a nice size department. I'm excited to engage them, to help grow your business. And they're part-time employees. Like, that's amazing. But part-time employees bring full-time problems, right? Just because they're only working for 4 hours, they're bringing their whole life with them for that 4 hours. We need to be aware as employers and as leaders that folk bring their full selves to their work. So it's important for us to be mindful that there's a need to treat our employees as full human beings. And there are programs that you can engage, employee assistance programs, other wellness programs to make sure that you are paying attention to that aspect of your employee. Lauren, you had your hand up.
We're good. I thought we had a question, but it was just a comment. So.
Oh, okay. Is there a comment I need to hear? You're good.
No, it was something Ebony wrote, but unless she wants to elaborate on it, we can move forward.
She's good. Cool beans. So what does that do? How do you make that happen? Focus on well-being. So you may need to ensure that your HR team or your leaders are coached in how to have these critical conversations. Emotional intelligence is very important in this aspect of the work, to be able to read what someone else is going through, how to position yourself in those conversations, understanding bias, implicit bias, understanding what the person brings to the environment, and be sensitive to the needs of your employees.
So I have
Effective
I have
engagement.
to ask you a question. So Melody, I mean, right then and there, it seems to me like you're asking a lot of people, especially people who are in higher level positions. How if they can't acknowledge this about themselves, if they don't know, they're not a perceptive person, or they're not a conversationalist, or they're not really clear or concise, how does that leave the employee, the underdog, so to speak? How do they handle that kind of leadership? How does that change?
Well, first of all, it's not the employee's responsibility to educate the employer, right? So it's the employer's responsibility to engage, to first of all, be aware, right? That's why it's important to have a tribe. It's important to have trusted advisors. It's important to have organizations that you're connected to, that you can have someone put a mirror up to your leadership style to say, this is where I need to grow. This is what I need help in. It's important to engage HR consultants like myself or other organizations to help you take a look at the key factors that are telling you that you're failing as a leader or you're struggling as a leader. Some of those key factors are your retention rates, are how many people do you have in a performance improvement plan? How many folk are actually absent? What's happening in supervision conversations? That's the data that comes into your business to help you understand what level of employment engagement you have and how your staff are performing. All that information is important for you as a leader. And then to be able to communicate even how you're trying to ensure that your employees are properly engaged to your employees. And guess what? Employees may not have been, you may not be the first employer that they have. They may bring with them levels of experience with exactly what we're talking about. And conversations, strength-based, growth-oriented, clear and ongoing communication will allow you to tap into that resource, into your human capital.
Wonderful. I can't help but think as you're speaking and talking, I keep thinking, God, what a wonderful recipe for parenthood. It seems like this is the kind of stuff that every parent, every leader should be aware of, talking about, thinking about, because it's like, it's the mom and dad who promised to get the ice cream cone, but then they never deliver the ice cream cone. How does the kid feel, right?
Yeah.
It's like these leaders have to be aware that if you're going to call yourself a leader, you have to be aware that you have to deliver as well, right? It's not just us delivering to you, but they have to deliver to us as well to make us want to stay, be engaged, keep it interesting, keep us moving, and the production of it all, right?
Well,
the goal is that we're attaining our goals and we're being productive.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, I say this often, that when folk choose to leave an organization, they typically, don't leave the organization, they leave a relationship. It's typically the relationship they have with their supervisor or their, a peer of authority. They walk away from that. So if before the hello, you ensure as part of your corporate strategy that you're thinking about all of these things ahead of time to ensure that you're engaging employees the best that you possibly can, and that you are having feedback loops through your management and through your leadership. And even if you're an employer of one, you minimize, you shorten the window, you close the box to folk exiting your business and costing you more money to replace them. Yeah.
Yes. Now listen, I've used this melodyism on several conference calls, and I want you to say it again real slowly so that everybody who watches this video will hear it. Go again.
Yeah.
Say it. Please say it.
Typically, people don't leave an organization or a business; they leave a relationship. I'll say it this way: I have conducted hundreds of exit interviews, and I would say 98% of them. When I say hundreds of them, there was always something about a person that triggered the conversation, the thought of leaving. People experience business through another person, right? And so it's important that we as leaders understand that we have control. We have a lot of bandwidth to design our corporate culture in which we place the employee engagement. It's powerful stuff.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
these are such golden nuggets right now, especially with so many businesses. And there could be some on the call now that are struggling to find people, right? And struggling to kind of put those teams together. So all of this being so proactive is, yeah, it's critical.
And then communicate it. Got to make sure communicate it. So I use a word that I want us to talk about, and that is corporate culture, like having an engaged employees in partnership with a great corporate strategy is golden. That's what we want. That's the vision. That's the goal. And more than anything, we want to make sure that we have the right people. We want to make sure that we have the right people in a great corporate structure. And oftentimes, particularly if we're starting business new, or if we're a small business, Paul, some of the people you work with, and certainly Maureen, the businesses, the larger businesses that you work with are afforded HR teams, there's always ways to grow, right? And so these are just a few values, a few ways that we can focus on corporate culture. And what is corporate culture? It's beliefs and missions and values, and more importantly, behaviors, because people will hear what you say, but they trust what you do. My grandma used to say, I can show you better than I can tell you, right? That guide, the corporate culture, guides how the company's management and employees interact with each other and handle internal as well as external business transactions. Know that your internal employees, the folk who work for you, are your customers as well. The folk who you sell your product to, who you sell your service to, are your external stakeholders. Your employees are your internal stakeholders. So it's important to create a strong company culture that isn't just about, and that just isn't good business. That actually is wisdom. And when I build HR teams, this is what I tell leaders. This is what I tell HR folk who work for me. You may not always agree with what I say, right? But if we work from the place of being fair, firm, consistent, and wise, you may not agree with what we say. HR does not always deliver good news, but you respect what I say. And if I have to come back around to use you to find another employee, then there'll be an opportunity. At least I've set the opportunity for good relationship and good relations. Yeah. Fair, firm, consistent, and wise.
Now, somewhere in there was another melodyism, which I don't think you've said it in the past. What's the one about they don't care about something until something else happens? What's that one?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for the reminder. And it really, I'll say it in a second, but it goes along with the fact that when you're communicating corporate structure and you're actively engaging your employees to have that environment, you got to let people know that you care about what they bring, because people don't care about what you know until they know that you care. Right? People don't care about what you know until they know that you care. And that's not my original. I got that from somebody else, some wise woman, I'm sure.
I'm adding that one to my quote book.
Yeah,
like that one
so feel free to use it. So in an effective and a vibrant and a rich corporate culture, and there are many corporate cultures that have great employee engagement, that are growing, where folk are excited, where their Google rates are great, where their Glassdoor rates are great, where their LinkedIn rates are great. You can't please everyone, but here are some things that I think in my experience and in my research are important to focus on. Have a foundation that is clearly communicated for your core values, things that you will not vacillate from, right? Your organization is clear in communicating that. One of those core values could be transparency. It could be that you are committed to community values. Have communication. Know what your communication policy is, establish it, and make sure that your staff knows what that is. You have open door policies. Is that important for you? Are your managers managing by walking around? Is that important for your organization? Are you a formal communication organization? Are you informal? All those types of things. What's important to you about community outside of your organization as well as inside? Building community is part of that relationship, building with your staff. Corporate outings, conferences, gatherings, and things like that. We're not talking about being best friends and families. We are talking about, though, having business, interpersonal business connection. Remember, that's what employees are looking for. Fostering connections. And when you do this, you eliminate silos. I don't know anybody else, but I've worked in places where the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing. But yet we were terribly dependent upon each other, right? But the communication did not happen until there was a problem. And the HR team was called in to fix it. But had there been open communication, had there been ready, relevant communication to communicate that there's a unified purpose and engagement with employees, you would have remedied that before the hello, yeah? So then the next few things I'll breeze through because I do want to get to this last slide, which is really important. Recognition is critical, and I said this before, recognition not for recognition's sake. Recognition needs to be honest, timely, and relevant, right? Folk know when they've done something well and recognizing them that they've done it well, and they're not just checking a box to say that I have a program, right? You need to be transparent, you need to be honest about it. This next thing, it's funny, I was telling someone, I was helping an organization build an onboarding process from learning about the organization to learning about the program. And they were placing folk at desks that had no chairs. I was like, that's really cool. So are we the type of organization where people are chosen to stand up and work? So if they're not, then what's the value of doing that? The physical space matters, right? It matters. If you're expecting your employees to use a phone, have a phone. If you're expecting them to use a computer, have a computer with the mouse, if that's what you expect. Pay attention to what you are placing your employees in, your human capital in. That says that I value you. That says that I'm prepared for you as an employer. I'm engaging you in the business of my business. I value and I'm prepared for you. And then, of course, learning and development, as we've talked about before, checking and monitoring the training that you're engaging your staff in, getting feedback, having a feedback loop. These are all the pieces to creating that corporate culture that will keep your employees engaged, that will allow that life cycle to continue, and that will hopefully keep your retention levels high and keep you from having to replace employees. And then lastly, listening and pivoting. There's a reason God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, my grandma used to say, right? It's important for us to be able to actively listen, wait for the answer, and then be available to pivot as leaders, as our organizations grow. We want to make sure that whatever strategy we put in place is flexible enough to grow as our business grows, and that our employees understand what that is so that they are able to grow with us. We've covered a lot today. And I think there's a lot for everyone on the call to think about. So we've taken a look at what it takes to get employees engaged, what an employee really is, and how the HR team should be part of your business strategy, helping you to engage employees for the hello, and how you as leaders can create this corporate structure. And if your HR team is engaged, your HR team should be positioned as HR professionals to help you promote and enable your organization to deliver this culture to your staff. There would be no value to this conversation without covering these foundational pieces. I'm going to go through them, and I would really appreciate if there's anyone that has a question at this point to pause me and just ask a question. I'm going to go through these given the time that we have. So foundation of HR. So you have an amazing corporate structure. You got, you know exactly the mission, the value, and the goal, core values and the goals of your organization. But these are aspects of your business that are absolutely critical. Any HR professional who's worth their salt will tell you that it's really important for you to have what's called an employee handbook or a manual. Your handbook is designed to share with your employees what the organization expects. You are required as well to share some state, county as well, and federal regulations with your employees. And the easiest way to do that is through a handbook and a manual. If you ever engage in any legal cases or any litigation, it's always valuable as an employee and as a leader to have a handbook back to which you can reference. Job descriptions are critical. When we talk about clear communication and transparency, how am I to know as an employee what you want me to do if you haven't told me? Right? Osmosis is no place for a business, right? We want to make sure that they understand and that we understand that they understand. Let me say that again, that they understand and that we understand that they understand, right? That dialogue back and forth. Employee policies outside of the handbook is something often that can be overlooked, but what's important about that is that handbooks have to change given laws that come into place from time to time. You change it then, but you don't have to change your handbook, update your handbook, which can be expensive every time you change an employee policy. There are policies that you can change, dress code policies, when lunch breaks, where they take in, those types of policies can change. You don't have to update. So if you have a separate place to hold those, then you don't have to go through the expense of updating your handbook. I always advise that you have what we call part of your bail team, a legal team, or trusted advisors. Folk who are going to look at your policies and say, check the box. Yep, you've checked your ADA policy, your FMLA policy, your FSA policy. All those policies are in compliance, as well with your regulatory agencies. If you're a nonprofit, or even if you're held to some other standard, the big O's, OMH, OPWDD, all those organizations, you need someone to look to see if your policies are in compliance with those agencies that help pay the bills so you can do the work that you do of your business. SOPs are critical from the standpoint that they get down into the nitty-gritty of how to get things done and provide the standard. When you have that feedback loop and you have that conversation with your employees, you can point to the handbook to say, yep, this was the standard. You can point to your SOPs and say, yes, this is what we expected you to do. Now tell me what you didn't understand, right? It gives you a way to say, this is the standard. I'm communicating this to you. We gave it to you. You signed off that you received it. You communicated to me. I gave you an opportunity to ask questions. And that's not punitive. That's communication. It's an opportunity for your employees to give you feedback and for you to ensure that they're aware for safety reasons and for productivity reasons. And then I always say, having a quality assurance and an internal auditing from a fiscal standpoint, as well as a procedure and process standpoint, is powerful. It gives you another fresh eyes to take a look at the work that is being done in your organization. I am someone who believes that if tech can help, let tech help, particularly your HR team. HR teams of old were filled with paper. Some paper you do have to have, but I would prefer that all of us be able to engage in enabling technology for payroll and HR that creates systems that are productive and allows us to focus on the growth of the agency and on planning on strategy as opposed to pushing paper. So here I'd like to say that I'm hoping that this chock full of information has been helpful to you. It's been my pleasure to be able to lend this lens, this view of looking at bringing HR into the conversation, helping to engage your employees, helping to build a corporate structure, knowing that HR can be a business partner, even entrepreneurial from the standpoint of being able to look at your organization from various aspects and be able to keep your employees and to grow your business. Any questions?
Melody, oh, go ahead, Maureen, I'm sorry.
I got a question. I'm just thinking of, how HR has changed or is changing. I recently heard a commercial, I think it was kind of like an HR group that you could call in on, as you need it. And it's almost like a centralized, IT company of HR professionals that can answer your questions versus as you're growing your business, having the ability to hire a full-time HR professional. So just wondering if you could speak a little bit about, how HR is changing and how accessible it might be becoming for all levels of businesses?
Absolutely. So as we know, the pandemic brought a lot of different opportunities to organizations. And one of those things, even pre-pandemic, HR consultants like myself have an opportunity to come in and provide those services, to do assessments, to first tell you where you are. Right? It's important for you to understand context. And those organizations can come in and be a virtual arm, your HR team. I would say to any organization who's interested in engaging a consultant or engaging an organization to come in and do that work, that there be someone within the organization who's able to validate that work, right? Someone who's in the organization who understands the culture, who understands the mission and the values, who lives that on a daily basis. That could be a chief operating officer, that could be an operations director, that could be a CFO. In other words, me coming into organizations similarly as that group comes in as a partner alongside the business, the folk who run the business needs to have a partner on the inside. I think that's valid. I think that that's a smart way to have cost savings on payroll, on benefits, on a number of ways to run your business. And it also gives you a partner who whose check is not necessarily, dependent upon the success of the business. Someone who can come outside from the outside as a consultant to come in and give you fresh eyes. Paul, did you have a question? Well, first of all, Maureen, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think, what I find fascinating is that, I think people's mindset with HR is, oh, they're the ones that you go to when you're in trouble, right? But it sounds like this is a much more modern take on what HR is about, what it needs to do, how it can help your business. And HR, even for one person, like you said earlier, I kept thinking about people who are a one-person entrepreneur, and they don't take time to, like, let's say, take care of themselves. They get burnt out quickly. They're out, they say, forget it, I'm going to abandon this idea, this vision, because I'm just too tired, right? So all that's part of learning the HR techniques to take care of yourself, to make sure you're being paid the correct amount, that you're saving the correct amount of money. I think my big question here is, HR to me today, what I learned is that it's more about relationships, right? Like, don't take the humanism out of human resources. So what can you say to us about, there's a borderline there, right? We talked about relationships, talked about people, taking care of each other and also being open, being transparent, but are there fine lines? Are there border lines that you can recommend or suggest? How far do you take it? Do you celebrate birthdays? Do you have big Christmas parties? Or is that just different for every, unique office? How does that translate into being relational, being human?
Well, let me first say that there's a reason why it's human resources, right? Because we're talking about humans. It's not robotic resources. It's not dollar resources. It's not shoe resources. It's human resources. So I'll answer it two ways. One, you still come to HR when there's a problem, right? The core function of HR is, if we go back to, say, the second or the third slide, is provide that level of support. But it is strategy. There is a plan, right? Part of what HR absolutely must do for the organization is to ensure that there is an environment to keep folk working. That's why you have a handbook. That's why there are regulations. That's why there are rules. That's why there are performance evaluations against standards. So by no means am I saying that it's about a party. We come in and we party as HR. I'm your best friend. Absolutely not. You cannot have standards without being fair, firm, and consistent, right? So HR is a business partner in the business. So yes, you do have Christmas parties. Yes, you do have greeting cards. Yes, you celebrate the human that's working for you, because the human comes to work. But business is still business. We aren't having a picnic. We're running a business, right? So there's a job description, there are procedural manuals, there are regulations, there are specific processes, policies that have to be in place so that everyone knows what the rules are. And that happens at onboarding. There are rules that have to be followed. And as leaders, it's our responsibility to communicate those and to ensure that our employees knows what those are. And when they're not followed, that there's a process in place to either help them create an opportunity within themselves to recognize that and follow them and get in line, or they have an amazing conversation with the HR professional who has great emotional intelligence, who's wise and is able to help offboard them from the organization.
Yeah, perfect. Makes great sense. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
I want to, the stay interview is something that is kind of a newish term or something that I've heard just more recently. How
Yeah.
important is that, and when should that be done? Is that like an annual thing, or?
Yeah, I think every organization is different. I think state interviews need to happen at least once a year, because there are certain inflection points, right? When you're dealing with change management, or an organization is growing or shrinking, when you know that there are aspects of the organization you need to take the temperature, right? You can enforce a state interview process. But I think it should be part of the regular communication between employer and employee. I'd recommend at least once a year. Not more than that, from the standpoint that folk got work to do. And there are performance evaluations that happen, right? So all part of that employee life cycle.
And how often should those happen?
Evaluations?
Performance, yeah.
They should happen once a year. I would say also after. So you have most companies in their employee manual and their policies have what's called an introductory period. Most of us know it as a probationary period. I say, if you haven't done anything wrong, why am I on probation? Right? Again, language. So it's an introductory period. We're at Will State here in New York, and most states are except for one. I get to decide whether I want to stay employed with you, and you get to decide whether you want me to stay employed with you, right? So it's that 90-day, 120-day introductory period. My strong recommendation and best practice in this field is to have some type of evaluation after that, so that you can judge whether or not this is a relationship that's going to continue. You can design that with the help of an HR professional, your HR team, your legal counsel, and then following a year from that. Anything more than that, can be cumbersome unless someone's on a performance evaluation, on a performance improvement plan. And so you want to evaluate them after the plan so that you can ensure that, they're going in the right direction, what the next step is, how to help that person from a strength-based perspective to grow.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, these are the little pieces that a valuable and trusted HR counsel or HR professional can help you with.
Wonderful. Any other questions?
I
All
see
right.
some in the chat.
Go ahead.
We're good? Okay. Well, I want to
Okay.
thank you so much for having me. I really appreciated the time. And Paul, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Melody, thank you. Unbelievable information, invaluable information. So we are here. You've heard it first here at CEDA Sparks. Whether you're a business of 1 or 1,000, you've just been given the outline for the modern definition of what it means to incorporate HR into your business and to help not just sustain it, but to help it grow. I'd like to thank my colleagues, Maureen, the attraction of big business specialist extraordinaire, and our marketing guru, Lauren, for her time in putting this show all together. Melody, as you can see on the last slide, is open to personal consultations and discussions. Please feel free to reach out to her at Auburn's newest co-working space, aptly called Melodies, which is located at 128 Genesee Street in Auburn, New York. Or per the slide on your screen, you can contact her via email at melodiescny, that's at gmail.com, melodies with an S, cny@gmail.com, or give her a call at 315-370-9227. If you have any other topics you'd like us to consider for future episodes or have any business needs, please contact a CEDA specialist. We are here for you. Again, Melody, thank you so much. What a wonderful time we've had. And I'm sure leaving calls because it's invaluable information. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.